Hello neighbors, it's Brad here from etrailer, and today we are taking a look at installing the Air Lift WirelessAir onboard air compressor on a 2023 Ram 3500. And this is going to be a great addition for those of you that have airbags installed and want to be able to control them remotely. So we'll take it in the shop, take a closer look at it. Having an onboard compressor for your airbags is not a necessity, but let me tell you, when it's really cold out and you want to adjust the pressure, having to find a place to do it if you don't have a compressor at home means that you're going to be out there in the cold adjusting it. And if you're not happy with the pressure, you're going to have to go back to that Schrader valve and figure out exactly where you want. Having the compressor means that you can do it from the touch of a controller, from the comfort of your truck on the fly. And I really appreciate that this technology exists. Mostly because this is wireless, you can kind of put this wherever. A lot of air compressors back in the day would have analog controllers inside the truck, which is fine for older trucks because they had a lot more space. But newer trucks really are getting harder and harder to find a good spot that's not going to be in the way. And that's why I think having something like this is a much better option. This can be charged. You'll have full control of both sides of your bags because this is a dual path setup. So that means that if you want a little pressure on one side and a lot of pressure on the other, you can absolutely do that. It's very easy to use. It gives you a nice clear readout, tells you which side you're filling, and you can have presets. So if you have maybe an enclosed fifth wheel race car hauler and the next weekend you're going to take your boat out, or you have a work trailer, you can have those presets to where once you're happy with it and dialed in, you can just push that, it'll automatically do it for you, and you're going to have a nice comfortable ride. It's also really nice too because it's going to maintain our minimum air pressure in the bag, so it's going to prolong the life of the bag so you don't have to keep track of how much pressure is in the bag. It's going to tell you directly, and if it falls under that threshold, it'll fill it back up. Another thing that's nice too is the fact that you can control it from your phone. You can download the app. So if you're worried about your kids playing with this or losing it or the battery being dead, you still have control wirelessly for your compressor. So that's really nice, and you're still going to maintain your manual Schrader valves. So with that being said, I'm a huge fan of these. It's going to work with any brand airbag. So if you have Firestone, Air Lift, or Pack Brake, doesn't really matter. They're all going to tie in roughly about the same. And this kit is nice. I mean, it's got a harness that's pretty well all taped together, so it makes it easy to run this to your battery. It comes with a mounting bracket that goes around the frame, so you don't have to self-tap into the frame. So overall, pretty easy to do. And if you installed the airbags yourself, this is one that I think you can handle. It's not too terribly difficult to do. With that being said, I'm going to show you the installation. But throughout the installation, if you decide, you know what, I don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to be under the truck and doing all that, you can find someone to get your compressor, your airbags, and any other accessory installed by using our dealer locator. You'll simply put in your zip code. You'll find a list of shops close to you that can get all of this installed so you can be out on the road enjoying your adventures and not have to worry about the install. But for you DIYers that are going to be tackling this yourself, I'll guide you through step by step. So let's get your compressor installed. Getting your compressor installed is actually a pretty easy process, especially if you tackle the airbags on your own. The compressor is really not that hard to do. The main thing that we need to do first though is get it mounted up, and this one includes a large U-bolt that works really well with the Ram chassis. So I've already mounted ours up. You can see that it is in a vertical position, so when you do set up your compressor, there are a few ways that you can't mount it, and that's with the Air Lift logo upside down or facing the ground. But beyond that, you have a lot of different options. There's also multiple mounting holes on our bracket, so they give you self-tapping screws. If you wanted to drill and mount it that way, you totally can. I like the U-bolts because it's super easy. It just goes around the frame rail, and then I used a flat washer and then nylon lock nut to get this secured. You have a little bit of adjustment. Just up top there is going to be wire loom. Just make sure you're not crushing that wire loom. Give it a gap as you mount this up, or run the U-bolt underneath it. We don't want to damage anything in the process. So once you get this mounted, you can see we're at our rear door. Somewhere along the frame rail here generally works really well. It gives us enough room to run our harness up to the battery, but also our air lines back to the airbags. So with this mounted up, we're going to start getting everything attached. And the first thing I like to do is get the electrical out of the way. So we'll grab our harness and unravel that. So pretty simple here. We have a plug that goes into the bottom of our manifold, and so we'll just get this snapped in. And then this white tab is gonna be our locking tab. So push that up, that should lock it in place. And off of our harness, you'll find that we have a black and red wire. That's gonna make attachment points to what we have on our compressor. But what I'll try to do here is, before making any of those connections, just keep in mind that we need to make these attached, so don't bind this up or put it in a spot where you don't have that extra slack. But I want to start running this to the battery, get this all laid out so the wires are out of the way. They do include these plastic Christmas trees here that you can put alongside the brackets, and it's going to allow you to zip tie up the wires. I tend to wait till the end, that way I can get everything tidied up exactly how I like it. So for now, I'm just going to kind of bunch this up. I may put a temporary zip tie to just hold this in place, but our harness, it's already taped up, so it really makes it nice. You don't have to run individual wires, but we want to make our way up into the engine bay and then eventually to the battery. And the whole time we're going to try to avoid anything hot, moving, anything that can damage the wires. So a lot of times if you follow the frame rail and use factory wire loom and zip tie it up as you go, that tends to be the best way. So I'll get mine routed up and then show you the path that I took. So I got our harness ran, I pulled it up into the engine bay and made some connections. So let's trace it so you can follow the same path. So I just went straight up and started zip tying it up to some of the factory wire loom, but we essentially just followed the frame rail the entire way up. Now, once we got past this body mount, this is where it gets pretty tight. So I used a zip tie here. You can see where I zip tied that up, but you do need to be careful. The turbo is there, and so is the wastegate sticking up. So I ended up putting a little bit of wire loom on our wires just for a little added protection. That way, you know, if it makes contact with anything hot, it's going to at least somewhat protect it. And I just really make sure to zip tie it up out of the way. So pretty simple here underneath. You just kind of run it along the frame rail. And for pulling it up into the engine bay, you can actually use some of the airline tube you may have as a pull wire. You can feed that down, tape up your wires and pull it up. It'll make it a lot easier rather than trying to just feed it up. So with it running up, I'll lower the truck down. We'll take a look at the engine bay and I'll show you those connections. So as I mentioned, I used wire loom. It's not included with this kit, but you can get it here at eTrailer or really anywhere. It just tidies everything up and keeps those wires bundled a little bit tighter, even though they're taped together. I personally like it. So you can see where I pulled it up on the passenger side, kind of tucked it behind our battery that we have there and kind of around that reservoir. So again, if you look straight down, the wastegate on our turbo sticks out, and that's where I was worried that it would make contact. So I really just tried to push it to the side and zip tie it back. From there, pretty easy. I just ran this across our wiper threshold. I used the plastic push pins. There's an opening in those to just zip tie that up as I went. And then you can kind of tuck it behind this harness here. And then I just looped it over to this battery. The reason I chose this battery is because it's close to a fuse box, and that's where that pink wire will come into play. So let's first take a look at our connections. So our black wire, I just split that off, and then when you put your ring terminal on, you just cut it, strip it back about 1/4 inch. I used the blue one, it's a smaller diameter, and then just attach that to our negative on our battery post. And then our red will go to our positive post, and here I'll pull this back so you can see it. And I put it to the side here, looped it through so it's nice and clean. Now I will keep our fuse out and I'll leave this open. We want to make sure we leave the fuse out until we have everything completely hooked up. That way we don't have power going through here. And on this one, I have a yellow butt connector. This is a heat shrink butt connector. So once you crimp it down and make that connection to your fuse holder, take a heat gun to it. That'll shrink around here, which is good protection for that connection. When it heats up, it'll kind of shrink around, creating a seal. So that way water won't get in here. And really, any connection, as far as butt connectors in an engine bay, it's well worth getting heat shrink butt connectors. It'll just prolong the lifespan of that connection made. Now the pink wire is up to you. Sometimes I've just taped it off, and other times I've ran it in to the fuse box, and that's what I did here. It's a trigger wire, so really what happens is this only will kick on the compressor if I have the key in the on position, and that comes into play. It's, you know, because your compressor wants to keep your bags at a minimum. If your truck sits for a while, and maybe there's a slow leak and it gets underneath there, that compressor is going to constantly run to keep that pressure maintained, which is a good thing, but it can drain your battery. So this becomes a trigger switch. If you tap it in, it's only going to kick on when you have that ignition turned on. So I did have to source a micro fuse tap, and I ended up putting it in. I'll pull this out and I'll show you and get a number for you. But it's the second 10 amp fuse back. So if I look at our panel, that's going to make it, let's see here, I believe it to be F93. So if I look at our chart here, F93 is going to be a spare. And as I tested it with my probe, I made sure that with the key in the on position, it kicked on, but when the key was in the off position, it was dead, and that's what we're looking for. So I just used the fuse tap. This will allow us to get power to our wire and still maintain that factory connection. So with that too, I did make a small notch in the side of our box here, and that's going to allow us to close this back down and not pinch that wire. So that covers the wire harness. So not too difficult. I like to get this out of the way because it is, I would think, the lengthiest process of the entire installation. So with these all made, we'll come back a little bit later to put our fuse in once we get the rest of it all finished. But let's head back to the compressor where we can make 2 more electrical connections and then start running our air vent or our filter and then tap into our lines, and then we're going to be cruising. So let's hop down there. Now our electrical connections under here are going to be pretty easy, and you're going to see off of our compressor we have a ring terminal and a spade connector, and believe it or not, we're going to be cutting both of those off. So you can snip those. And then on our harness, when we ran those, remember we had the red and black wires that were loose. These are just going to connect color for color, so we'll strip these back, and then using those heat shrink butt connectors, we'll get these connected and shrunk together. And sometimes if it seems pretty loose, what I like to do is strip back a little bit of extra, and then I just bend over the ends, and sometimes that'll give it a little bit more bite in that butt connector. You don't necessarily have to, but ours is pretty loose, so it can't hurt to do this. So with that connected, I'll just get our black ones attached as well, and we'll shrink these up. Now, at this point, that would be it for our electrical connections, so that's where those little black caps will come in play. We can kind of mount this up. You know, there's multiple spots here, but really get this as clean as possible looking and up out of the way so it's not going to be dragging down. So I'll get this all in place and then show you how it looks. So I got this all zip tied up, and I'm happy overall. The main thing is keeping these up out of the way as much as possible. Now for our next step, we're going to be getting our air filter in, and this is going to be the air that the compressor uses to put in our bags. So the main thing with this is getting it in a spot that is out of any way of water getting into it. I mean, it's got a cap that'll protect it. So a lot of times we'll kind of go up behind the bed. This is going to be all open, and generally that's a pretty good area to do it. But we do need to do a minor assembly here. So we have our nipple brass fit, or it's not a brass fitting, but we have a barbed fitting. We'll just thread this on by hand. You don't need to put any thread tape or anything like that. And then you'll find that there's a small section of airline tube that's a little bit harder, a little bit has a little bit more body to it. And one side will go onto our barbed fitting. The other side, unfortunately, it's going to be tough to see, but at the top of our compressor, you probably noticed there's a barbed fitting up there. So ours is going to be right up here. So I'll thread on one part of our hose, get that attached, and then I'm going to route this up and put it up there. Now there is going to be a clip, so if you find an opening somewhere in the metal you can pop this in, that's a good way to do it. But try to keep it in this vertical position if possible. And if you have extra airline tube, don't cut it off. Sometimes it's actually helpful to have an extra curl in it. Any moisture can kind of sit there and not pull into the compressor. So I'll get this all routed up real quick. From the top of our manifold, I routed this back, and I looked for a spot, again, that's going to be protected, and I didn't see anything that really popped out immediately. Normally I can do it here, so I just kind of continued back, and there's this little bracket here, a little support bracket, and it's in front of our inner fender liner, so theoretically nothing should shoot up there, and I just zip tied that up. I kind of wedged it in there, and where that little attaching point would be, I just zip that up around it, nice and solid there. So with that all in place, the next thing we need to do is route our lines. And being that we have two different ports, it's important which side goes to which bag. And if you ran your airbags, you should know that it's really not too terribly difficult to do this. We're basically just going to use a T-union to tap into our airbags. So with our compressor, I find that it's a lot easier if you run one at a time. I have both of them here, but that way you don't, get them twisted as far as which one goes to which. Worst case, you can always unplug it and route it to the other bag, but you want to make sure, as you do this, that you're routing it all properly. That T-union looks like this. And really, we want to maintain our manual fill valves. So ours already has the Schrader on it from the manual filling of the bags. So really all that's going to happen is where we have a line going into our airbag, we'll just tee this in. So one will go back to our manual fill, one will be our line from the compressor, and then one goes into the bag. So I'll get this all routed and then show you the path I took. So routing both of our lines back, I kind of followed the same path, and then I got to this cross member or support in between the frame, and that's where I split it off to run over to our driver's side. I did have extra, so as I mentioned, I just kind of coiled that up, and then here's our T. So pretty straightforward, goes straight to the bag down here. The other one goes to our manual fill, and then on the other side, I just kind of continued by the shock mount here and made that same attachment. So the reason I chose this is because it keeps it away from the exhaust. Same thing over here. I try to keep it as tidy as possible. This distance, I don't worry too much. The main thing is it's not going to make contact with that. So with all of that in place, the next thing that we need to do is grab our fuse and our controller, because it's time to test to make sure that it's all working. So I put the battery in our controller. I have our fuse that I'll put in our fuse holder. And immediately once I put that in, I hear our compressor. I see that WirelessAir and some numbers pops up. So I'm going to select that. That's going to connect it. Pairing successful. Now, if it doesn't work, and don't be surprised if it doesn't, if it says pairing unsuccessful, don't freak out. A lot of times that'll happen. That's why it's important. I put the battery in the controller first and then the fuse. But if you're having issues, pull that fuse out, wait about 10 to 15 seconds. That'll reset it. Try again, and generally you won't have any issues. So as far as the controller, and just like our airbag installation that we did, if you install it yourself, you probably remember making sure that there's no leaks. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to bump the pressure up on both of the bags. I'll say about 40 PSI. And let it fill up. And then once we have that air in the bags and it's all raised up, we'll grab soapy water and spray all of our new connections as well as the old ones. Make sure we don't have any leaks. All right, so spraying this down. Again, we're going to be looking for any large bubbles that form. And audible leaks obviously as well. But if we do start to see those large bubbles forming, something that you're going to want to do is bleed out the pressure, make sure there's no pressure in the bags, obviously, so it doesn't burst. But just a lot of times it's going to be based off the cut, which if you did your airbag install, using a tubing cutter on any connection is well worth it because it should seat up well. But if you are getting leaks, best thing is get a nice clean cut and then reseat it in the connection here, and that should fix it more times than not. So far, nothing on those fittings. I'm just going to continue spraying, make sure that everything's looking good. And as I spray this, something to point out is this is rated to obviously be on the exterior of the truck. So as far as road grime, anything like that, this is going to hold up to it with no issue. Now, thus far I haven't seen any leaks, but something else that you want to check is individual control of each bag to make sure that you have the proper one set up. So best way to do that is going back to our controller. Being that this is a dual path setup, you have individual control of each bag, so pretty easy to use. You'll see our truck here. I'm just going to go to our driver's side and I'm going to lower this down to the minimum, which is 5 PSI, and we should see our driver's side lower down. So with everything working properly, no leaks, now you get to play around and raise and lower your truck with the touch of a control. I love having an onboard compressor for any truck with airbags because as you're driving, even through our parking lot, I like to really play with that pressure and you can immediately feel the difference while driving, whereas normally you'd have to go out and fill that valve, and to get immediate feedback right away is super nice. And being that it's really cold out, trying to fill this up when it's chilly out is not nearly as easy and great as having a controller inside your cab to be able to just adjust that. And also with the onboard compressor, it covers a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't know with just a normal fill, and that's going to be maintaining a minimum air pressure. So with any airbag, you want to have at least 5 psi to hold the body of the bag. And sometimes with manual fill, if you have a slow leak, you really won't know unless you check it. Whereas this is going to kick on to maintain that 5 psi, and it's a good chance to tell you that there's a leak. This also does have error codes to let you know if there is any issues, but it's nice to be able to look down and know exactly what the pressures are in your bag, or even just have a preset ready for that trailer when you're ready to hook it up. And then if you go to your next trailer, you can use your other preset. So a lot of advantages to onboard air, and especially with a controller like this on a newer truck. A lot of your old analog controllers are very difficult to find spots for, and this really solves the issue. Now, if your kids get a hold of this and you can't find it, you can still download the app and control your airbags with no issue. And always, you'll have your manual fill. So if you ever had issues, you can still get your airbags to work. So definitely a great addition. If you're wanting to be able to adjust your airbags on the fly from the comfort of your truck, I'd highly recommend looking at the Air Lift WirelessAir Compressor. It can work with any brand of bags, but on our 2023 Ram 3500, I'm really happy with the results, and I think you will be as well.